back, and Susan B. Mitchell is here to talk about her book, Forever Stalwart, The Journey of Three Pioneer Families, Titus Billings, Isaac Morley, and Edward Tuttle. And Miss Susan is a faith-based author, and her mission is to create uplifting, inspiring stories rooted in truth and history. And one of those that we're here to talk about today is Forever Stalwart, and it tells the true and inspiring story of three pioneer families whose lives intertwined at every turn. We're talking about struggles, deaths, unfair treatment from government officials, mob assaults, extreme weather, sickness, injury, starvation, separation, Indian attacks, and so much more. It has something for everyone, and it's fun, and it's historical, and it's an exciting read. So we're about to jump in and find out from the source herself, Susan Billings Mitchell, about why we need to run and not walk and get this amazing book. So, Miss Susan, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Wonderful. And what do you think I left out of that introduction? What should we know about you?
It was great.
Good.
There's a lot in there, and you covered it well. Thank you.
Well, very good. And so tell us about this book.
Okay. Well, to be honest with you, my father asked me to write this book. It's about my great-great-grandfather, and his daughter said he had a journal, but it was destroyed because he ran for his life so many times. And Dad wanted this, his name shows up here and there and everywhere in little books, but it's just a sentence. And Dad said he wanted me to create his biography, make it factual, and make it interesting. And I didn't know what I was getting into. I researched it for 3 decades. Of course, I was trying to raise a big family at the same time. And then was able to get it on paper, and I nailed down all of the references and all of the facts, and I have what I call the historical account, but it's very boring. So then I turned myself loose to try and make it read like a novel.
That's an amazing process.
But you have to be so careful when you use real people's names.
Ooh, of course.
I don't want to get over there and have Grandpa mad at me, so I was really careful. But truth is truth, and I put in it everything I could find and where I found it.
Well, very nice. And I imagine it came out better that way. Like, you think about when they put out fiction, like they put out, say, like Law and Order or something, they say like ripped from the headlines, right? Because if you were to try to conjure up something fictional, it's like, well, you only have the real world to draw onto, and sometimes they change details or combine things, but it's like, hey, the real history, I think it makes it a lot more interesting and exciting. But for you, it's like, I imagine like 10 times more work just to make sure that's all accurate. But I think we should all be so lucky, right? Imagine if in the year 2500, one of our descendants went and pieced together what we did. Of course, you and I have not lived like an exciting life of running for our lives, but you know, so why would they have like an action-packed book about you or me? But tell me about what's happening in this book. What's the running for one's life, and what are the adventures?
So, Forever Stalwart in Missouri, actually, it started out as a huge book. It was 800 pages. And my auntie said, the problem with your book is I can't read it in bed. It's too heavy to hold. In fact, I met a lady in the doctor's office, and her husbands were having surgery, so we had all day to talk. And, of course, I shared about the book. Well, long story short, she bought the book and read it. And she left a message on my answering machine. I've got it on my website. It's so sweet. She said, honey, I bought your book and I read it and I loved it. But I have a confession. I had to take a knife and slice it in half so I could hold it with my arthritic hands. I thought that was so sweet. So I've now cut it up into, well, it'll be 6 volumes. There's 5 that tell the story, and they're all out, but the 6th is coming because it has all of the pictures and documents and letters, and they'll be in color. In the big book, they couldn't be in color, but these will be in color. So you're asking about Missouri. It's called A Time of Testing, and it was an amazing period in history. They were so tested. So much happened. And actually, I think I learned after I went back and reread the books, there's a theme in here: opposition in all things. When the Lord does something good, Satan does something not good, and it just goes back and forth. And our lives are that way too. We have to use our agency to choose which we're going to follow, and that's how it was for these people back then.
Ooh, That's beautiful, and that's helpful even in the present day. That life throws both good and bad at you, and it's up to you to decide what to focus on, or where you want to go, or what you want more of, or where you want to adjust. None of us get out of this alive. None of us have it 100% easy. So it's up to us to choose our direction in life. And so I'm looking at the different books. I'm looking at Forever Stalwart in Iowa, Nebraska, and Wyoming, and in Ohio. And so what's like the through line? Because I know like the Mormons were always moving, right? They went to Mexico and they settled in Salt Lake City, but what's kind of the overarching narrative of what was once 800 pages and is now 6 books?
Well, I actually have done it by location. So it starts in Ohio, which is a time of discovery. That's where they learned about the church, but it's also where Titus and Diantha met each other and discovered each other. That's kind of a love story part. And then the second book is Missouri, the time of testing. The third is Illinois, a time of sacrifice. There was a lot sacrificed there. Even their prophet was martyred there. And then they cross the plains, like you mentioned, a time of enduring. And then they end up in Salt Lake, a time of refining.
Nice. And it makes me think, like, I know when I was a kid, I came across like an atlas, and there were different pages, and they were saying like, hey, here's like the plain states, and here's like Florida and New York. And it was just so much fun just as a kid to imagine just going somewhere and like going from place to place, and like leaving things behind, and what's the unknown and unexpected in front of you. And so going and to place, you say that the prophet was murdered, and that they were kind of running for their lives. Like, what is remarkable, or what do you think is worth mentioning about, like, maybe some kind of along the way, like some conflict or adventure? Like, I know there's so much to it, but do you think there's something that it's noteworthy right now, talking about just one of the conflicts in these many books?
Okay, they didn't set out to be heroes. They just wanted religious freedom. They just wanted to live the new gospel. And it just seemed like opposition just kept pushing them. When they're in Missouri, Governor Boggs puts out an extermination order against the Mormons. All Mormons they had to run for their lives. I'll tell you something interesting on that, though. When we lived in Missouri for a while ourselves for 6 years, and we were there in 1976. That is when Governor Bond undid Governor Boggs. He rescinded the extermination order. And that was thrilling to me. I've got both official orders in the book.
Oh, cool.
And it meant a lot to me. Of course, it hadn't been active for a long time. We were safe while we were there. But it was just fun for me to be able to see that lifted off in all that time since Grandpa was there. So, but yes, it seemed like, well, this story starts in Ohio. The church really started in New York, but it was so good. And they worked so hard and had such a nice community. And in fact, Isaac Morley, his farm, if you go back to Kirtland, Ohio, well, Mentor is between Mentor and Kirtland, is the Morley farm. And it's a nice visitor center place there. Well, Lyman White came to them, and he proposed that these people join and live common law like in the New Testament. And so they and some other families moved and built houses on this farm, and they were living common law. And then when they had to leave, well, Isaac Morley was called on a mission to Missouri. And so Isaac's a little older than Titus. They're brothers-in-law. They did everything together. And in the Doctrine and Covenants, Titus is commanded to sell the property and take the funds to Missouri to buy property. Isaac's gone. So Titus is left in charge of the farm. That kind of bothered me. How can you sell somebody else's property? But as I researched, Titus owned a lot of that property himself. He was a joint owner, so it made sense.
Nice. So even in the process of figuring this out, you had to fill in the gaps. You say, hey, like you even answered some of your own questions in there. And I think that's like there's some magicalness, if that's a word, that happens from putting out a book, right? Especially if it's based in specific locations, even if it's like a complete made up plot, when it's kind of in certain towns and like where the buildings are and the locations, like it's kind of fun, right? It's like you can physically go there, and in your case you can go to the actual place where some of these things happened. And I think that's a cool effect of putting out a book. And something else that is really interesting is that I think every author that puts out a book kind of undergoes some kind of a discovery transformation process. And I've never met an author that has not been permanently changed by putting out their book. And with you, 800 pages, 5 volumes, plus the 6th one, and all these years, decades of researching, I can only imagine how you've changed. So is there anything you have to say about that? Like, how have you evolved as a person in the process of writing these books?
Wow. Well, it was really a journey. I learned a lot. And I need to tell you, I started this before computers. I'm so thankful for computers. But the research was just so tricky. It was just so much time. My grandchildren can't appreciate it because everything's online now, but it wasn't back then. I had to go sit in little museums and libraries and find things, but it was so interesting to find it. And I feel like it really bonded me. I feel like I know Grandpa Titus. My brother said to me, "You've done everything but dig him up and ask him." And I said, "Oh, if I could only do that," because I wanted it accurate. But
Yeah.
you learn from real people. And I think it's empowering when I think, oh, they did that. Surely I can do this. So I want people, especially the young people, my posterity, I want them to know these true stories so they can be empowered by them and move forward.
Oh yeah, they call that perspective, right? You say, "Oh, my problems in my life are so hard." Well, boy, you look into how badly our ancestors had it with cholera and typhoid fever and dysentery and who knows what else. By their standards, I mean, they would love to have it as easy. I mean, you'd have 7 kids and hope that 2 or 3 survived. And nowadays we say, "Oh no, my Starbucks took 2 whole minutes to be delivered to me." It's like, hey, look at how much rougher history used to be, but then you can kind of re-experience the past without having to suffer the way they did and go on these amazing adventures. And so you put in a lot of hard work, it seems. And you're so right. The kids these days, they don't appreciate that you had to dig through the microfiche and the Dewey Decimal System and the card catalog and all that stuff. Now it's just instantly available. But that sure takes some skills and some perseverance. And my understanding is that you've been a writer since the 4th grade when you won a box of crayons. So I'm interested in your origin story. What was that growth like?
Oh, in grade school, they had a contest. The first one was to write a story, and I won a prize for that. And then the next year, in 5th grade, the first one was a poem, and the second one was a story. And I got a really nice set of watercolors. And I just thought, this is fun. I like writing. I've always enjoyed storytelling. And just kind of happened.
Okay, so you have a built-in skill. And do you think, is there anything about your process that is unique? Because I know that like my dad was not a good writer, but he would just like edit like 10, 20 times to get one sentence, and then it would be good. And you hear about things like Stephen King writes 2,000 words a day, and so his secret is the routine. So do you think, is there a secret to writing when it comes to you?
Well, I think it's important when you're writing to take off your editor hat and just let it go, and then put on the editor hat and go back and edit it. But I'll tell you an interesting thing in the first book. So Titus and Diantha had 9 children in Ohio before they even discovered the church. How do you make that interesting? So I got to number 7. I thought, what am I going to do to make this interesting? Well, if it so happens that if Titus was able to go back home, he was from Massachusetts. If he went home for his mom's funeral, and I don't know if he did or not, but if he did, he would have crossed where they were working on the Erie Canal. And so, knowing my dad and my grandpa and the things they've done with water and farming, and I think he'd been intrigued with that. So I had him go work at the Erie Canal. And so chapter 13 is letters back and forth. And I once had a writing teacher tell me, if you develop characters and get them on the screen talking to each other, you'll be surprised where they take you. That happened that day because I had them going back and forth in letters, and it just unfolded. But the beauty of it is, I had a lady call me, and she said, "Where are those letters? Where did you find those wonderful letters?" At the back, the end of each chapter, there's a historical background where I put all references, and if there's anything fictitious, I say so. And it says, "These letters are fictitious." She was so disappointed. She said, "I knew they were true." That was kind of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You piece together as best you could, and you say, well, I'll combine. If I just had the historical account, well, that on its own is boring. So I have to add my somewhat embellishments and like your detective skills and say, hey, if they would have crossed the Erie Canal, maybe they would have worked there and they would have written those letters. And I think that's a secret to writing that you hear about too, where like writing is a very solitary experience, isn't it? You're even saying you kind of put on your writing hat, you get the words out, then you do editing, and then only after that maybe others would look at it. But it's like a lot of it is spent by yourself, but then you have to kind of think like, okay, well, that from a storytelling perspective is not exciting, right? Even though it's just me, then you need the dialogue, the back and forth, even like you and me are doing here, right? If it was either one of us just spouting off for an hour, that's not exciting, but we kind of do the witty banter back and forth. Like that's a lot of fun with writing and entertainment in general. And so you've been on quite a journey, many decades, a whole lot of work putting out these books. What's next for you? Is it a matter of like more publicity or other books, or like what's in the future for you the next 6 to 12 months?
You know, if I would live long enough, I would like to write fiction, but I'm not going to because Dad asked me to do this story and Mother asked me to edit stories. I've got so many wonderful ancestors with beautiful stories, but those great big single-spaced book of remembrances, the young people are not going to read those. In fact, old people aren't reading them, I'm finding. So what I'm trying to do is mine the treasures out of these books and just bring it out and make a little story. I want to do justice to my other relatives, but I can't give them each 30 years.
Right.
So that's my next thing. It will be Stalwart Saints. And it'll be the stories of other people. They're inspiring, beautiful, amazing stories. I've put a few. There's a thing called FamilySearch Family Tree online. It's the LDS family history. You can go in and find out about your people, and you can upload pictures and stories. So what I've been trying to do is take a picture and a story and put it on the tree so they can find these things. And I've already had some really sweet results with people. Oh, that's so wonderful. Oh, where did you find that? You know, so that's the next thing.
Oh, that's so cool to think about. Just that we all, I mean, all of us, right? You go back and you trace the lineage. And I think what's good about the modern era is that now all that information is indestructible, right? Like back in the 1700s, 1800s, well, what happened to that birth certificate or that county record? But now that it's all digitized, those future generations, they can trace it back. And even this book series, I mean, that'll be on a cloud server somewhere for centuries, long after both you and I are gone, right? Any of your descendants can look up and see about this kind of semi-fiction, semi-nonfiction account of what this family and their amazing adventures were. But we've been jumping around different topics and ideas here. But I want to make sure in these final few minutes we talk about what's important to you, Miss Susan. So do you think there might be a missing question that I should be asking you? I just don't know what to ask you.
No, I think you're doing great. I will tell you that my website motto is Hearts Turn When History Talks. And I think history is so important. If we don't learn from the past, we're going to repeat the same mistakes. Oh, yeah. And there's an effort out there to destroy history. A lot of our history is just being wiped out. That's not right. And so I think my heart of hearts is to share all the true stories I can, because there's power in those and we need to know those. We need to share those.
Oh
And
yeah.
I do think hearts turn when history talks. When you get to know a story, okay, so my sister was assigned to be the genealogist of the family. She does the names and the dates and the places, and I'm the historian. If so, she makes the skeleton, but then I bring the meat. If you don't have the skeleton, it's not going to work. But
Right.
together, I really think it's the stories that turn hearts.
Ooh, that's beautiful. That's wonderful. Well, if someone out there says, I love what Susan Billings Mitchell has to say, and I love her personality, and I want to check out these books, where should someone go to get themselves a few copies?
Oh, well, they're all available right now on Amazon. And I have a website and I offer some little digital gifts if you buy. I was doing the store, but I got to write. I don't have time to manage all of that. So I'm going to let it be printed on demand at Amazon. But if you go on my website and purchase, it will link you there. And if you wanted to get a book, and if you liked it and leave a kind comment, and then give me your email so I know, Amazon doesn't let me know who buys the books. But if you let me know you buy the book, then I'll send some of these free digital gifts. I'm quite excited. I've made crossword puzzles that all the answers, there's one for each book. The answers are in the book, and just some fun little things. Once I wrote a song years ago in 1971. I wrote a song called Endure to the End, and I'm sharing that on the Crossing the Plains, the time of enduring. So little things like that just to enhance it a bit.
Yeah, I agree. You keep making me think about when I was younger, and I loved when you would get a book plus a cassette tape along with it, and you could like read some like Sesame Street book and then turn the page, and then like Big Bird would be talking to you, and then you see a picture, and then you read the words, and it's like you feel it's like better than a movie, right? Because a movie doesn't really allow you to use your imagination, but a book does. But still, you're kind of have the unsureness of, well, am I imagining it right? And was the wagon looking like this? And did the man in the hat and his clothes? But when you kind of have that extra multimedia, you get the best of both worlds, don't you? You have a lot of
Yes.
information plus your imagination. And so by going to stalwartstories.com, then you can also experience the extended expanded universe, as they say, right? It's not just some books, but there's also these other experiences and events and adventures. Even I'm looking at the phone message, right? The lady that you talked about in the doctor's office and left you the message on the machine. Even that's right there
So
at stalwartstories.com. That's stalwartstories.com. Hearts turn when history talks. And so, as Susan says, we really want you to go there and enter your email address there. That way you can keep in touch, because Amazon doesn't share that. But from that website, they will also link you to Amazon, where you can check out the Forever Stalwart series. You can get the big giant 800-page book, it looks like, and you can also get the individual volumes if you say, hey, I have a long plane ride or train trip, I want the big one. Or if you say, hey, I have my arthritis, or I want to read it in bed, and if this thing falls, it'll knock me unconscious, I want the smaller volumes, and you can pick and choose which one that you want. So that's stalwartstories.com. And then that's Susan Billings Mitchell on Amazon to check out the different volumes of this book and the amazing adventures of Mormons living through this historical era. And I know that we mentioned the website, we mentioned a fun quarter lesson. Do you have any final parting words for us, Miss Susan?
Well, I might make an announcement. I am working on Audible of the big book. It has
Ooh.
101 chapters, and I have 10 left to go. And then it will be available. Like you said, the book with the CD, well, it will be. But I'm finding, it's really interesting to me, men like the big book. I've got 3 men that have gotten mentioned to me lately that they're enjoying the big book. So that, but ladies sure like the smaller ones. So whatever.
Yeah, it's like, even like whatever this book is, like I can lift it. I feel like I've got my man strength. I'm working out, but then the ladies want the little dainty one that fits in the purse. I can completely relate. Well, wonderful. So check that out. That's the Forever Stalwart series, and you can go to stalwartstories.com and read more. And it's been such a pleasure, such a blast speaking with you today, Miss Susan Mitchell. And I wish you the best of your future authorship publication adventures. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.